Allosaurus. Sorry that last video was so short. I had a telephone call and had to stop the video. But let's go on. Allosaurus is another theropod dinosaur. Again, look at the grappling hook like arms, the razor sharp teeth, the large head. These were very muscular, and they were one of the terrors of the Jurassic period. So those are the theropod dinosaurs. Dinosaur paleontologists like to say that all killers walk on two legs. And that's true for dinosaurs. All dinosaurs are bipedal, that are carnivores. And so all of your carnivore dinosaurs were bipeds. They walked on two legs. Second type of dinosaur we're going to talk about, which is also a sauriscia, it's also a lizard-tipped dinosaur, are the sauropods. You can see how enormous sauropods were compared to a human. In fact, some of them were 50 feet tall or 100 feet long. These were the largest animals to ever walk the face of the earth. There's a few things that stand out about the sauropods that might help you remember them. The first is sauropods have a very long neck and a small head. The fact that they have a small head tells us that they had a very small brain. They were not very intelligent. They had very long necks as well. They were quadrupeds. They had whip-like tails. And sauropods, their ultimate protection was their size. If they grew large enough, then there was nothing that could threaten them, even a Tyrannosaurus rex, because sauropods moved in large herds across the fern plains, and their favorite food was ferns. Let's take a look at their teeth. See the peg-like teeth of these sauropods? Perfect for stripping ferns off of their stems. Their favorite food was ferns, and they would roam the fern plains of the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, and the very latest part of the Triassic period. They moved around in herds in order to for protection. They can use this tail to knock down a theropod dinosaur. And the mating was a difficult thing for sauropods, especially for females. Why? Well, in order to mate, the male had to mount the female, and the female that was an excruciatingly. We think it was very painful for her, because imagine having 10 tons on your back, and so that put a lot of stress on the pelvis of the female. After the female got pregnant, she would lay her eggs in clutches. So sauropods would lay their eggs, as you can see here. They would lay their eggs, and the little sauropodlets would hatch, and they would immediately go into the forest. Why? Because there were so many things that could attack these little sauropodlets. They needed to hide in the forest and stay absolutely still if there were any theropods around who would try and eat them. These tiny little sauropodlets would begin their lifelong obsession with eating. They would eat leaves as non-stop, and they would grow very quickly, so that maybe after 10 years they would be large enough to leave the forests, and then they'd have to find a herd of sauropods that would accept them into the herd. Once they were accepted into the herd, they were protected from predators. Next, we want to talk about the Ornithopods, of which there are 5 types: Ankylosaurus, Stegosaurus, Ceratopsians, Pachycephalosaurs, and Ornithopods. First, let's talk about ornithopods. Ornithopod dinosaurs, which used to be called bird-hipped dinosaurs, are the most common dinosaurs that we find. And let's take a look and see what they look like. Here's a typical ornithopod dinosaur. You can see sometimes it walked on 2 legs and sometimes it walked on 4 legs. So it was a biped part of the time, and it was a quadruped at other parts of its time. These are herbivore dinosaurs. The only carnivores are the theropods. And these would move in huge herds of thousands from North America to South America. It was quite common for them to move in herds of thousands. We find ornithopod dinosaurs in Tennessee and throughout the southeast. They were common here. And let's take a look at some of the ornithopods had head crests. You can see that many ornithopods had these elaborate head crests. What was the purpose of these head crests? Well, there were several purposes, we think. One was to attract mates. Maybe this was attractive to the opposite sex. And also the nasal passages went through these head crests, and when we vertebrate paleontologists blow air through it, they make sounds. So we think that they communicated between different members of the herd by blowing air through these head crests. Different sounds might indicate different things. Perhaps food is nearby, or there's a predator nearby, or mating calls. Ornithopod dinosaurs are the most common dinosaurs that we find. They were particularly abundant during the Cretaceous period, the last period of the Mesozoic era. Next type of ornithopod we want to talk about are Pachycephalosaurs. Pachycephalosaurs, again, Latin is useful when you're studying dinosaurs. Pachyo means thick. Cephalo means skull. So these Pachycephalosaurs had very thick skulls, particularly the males. Let's take a look and see what they look like. Pachycephalosaurs. These are the second type of ornithopods dinosaur. Look how thick their skulls are. They've got these thick skull caps. So these would be easy to remember for the test because they got these thick skulls. They were bipedal. They were herbivores. They had muscular rear legs used for running fast. And what is the purpose of these thick skulls, especially on the males? They're several inches thick. Well, we think that the purpose was either defense. You could use this to prevent an attack by a theropod, or the males, we notice when they get older, they have lots of cracks in their skull cap. And we think that, you know how, oh good Lord, let's see. Okay, I gotta get my video back up here. Let's see. Do you know how bighorn sheep, they butt heads, and the winner of the battle gets access to females? That's also a possibility, that the males butted heads in mating rituals to get access to females. These are called Pachycephalosaurs. Next type of ornithopods dinosaur we want to talk about are the Ceratopsia. Let's talk about them for a moment. Ceratopsian dinosaurs. Okay, Ceratopsian dinosaurs, probably the most famous is Triceratops. And you can see this is Triceratops. And they were quadrupeds. They had sharp beak-like jaws, perfect for cutting through the toughest vegetation. Very common dinosaur during the Cretaceous especially. They would move in herds. They had a bony fringe here that was to protect them. Sometimes they had spikes on the end of them. There's various head shapes that are associated with Ceratops. Even some of them had one horn, some had two horns, some had three horns. You can see some different shapes. These are all different types of ceratopsians. Bony fringe, beak-like sharp mouth, quadrupeds, and sometimes they would protect themselves by, have you ever seen what muskox do up in Canada? They make a circle with the big males on the outside and then the females on the inside and the babies in the center. And when they got into that defensive formation, it was very hard to attack them. Theropods would have to be very careful before they attacked any herd of these ceratopsians. So they would not risk an injury to themselves by attacking these. They would go after the weak or the ones that were all alone by themselves. They would look for the easy kill. These are the ceratopsian dinosaurs. Let's talk about the next type of ornithischian dinosaur, which is called the Stegosaurs. Stegosaurs were a very common ornithischian dinosaur that existed during the Jurassic period. And this is a typical stegosaur. Notice its small head. It wasn't very intelligent. It was a quadruped. It was a herbivore. Several things might help you remember what a stegosaur is. Besides the small head and being a quadruped, it's also got these sharp plates on its back. And we know that the blood vessels went through these plates, so they could flush blood through these plates. So the plates probably were useful in there were several possibilities in how they were used. One is they could have flushed blood through these spikes on its back. And you know how lizards, they're not very intelligent. They'll sometimes change color to scare away other lizards. Well, maybe they use these displays of color to scare away any possible enemies, including your theropods or even other stegosaurs. The other possibility is that this was used to attract females amongst the males, because you have more blood capillaries in the spikes on the males, and so they might have used these flashes of color to get female attention. It was part of perhaps the mating ritual. Another way that the stegosaurs could protect themselves is they had these spikes that were a yard long, 3 feet long, on the end of their tails. Any potential threat, such as theropods, and if they could be severely injured, and if you were severely injured as a theropod, you could no longer hunt. It would lead to your death or at least an injury. And these wouldn't move around. These stegosaurs wouldn't be on their own. They'd move around in twos and threes. And to attack a stegosaur was a dangerous thing. You can see this theropod here might think twice about attacking such a large creature with these spikes on the end of their tail. The last type of dinosaur we're going to talk about, you need to know about, are the Ankylosaurs. Ankylosaurs were very common during the Cretaceous, and they would often follow the huge herds of ornithopods. The ornithopod dinosaurs move in herds of hundreds or even thousands, and these, being heavily armored, were very slow walkers, and these would hang around at the end of the ornithopod herds. Why? For protection. If these ornithopod dinosaurs sensed danger, they would blow air through their head crests and make sounds, and that would warn the ankylosaurs of impending danger, and they could take appropriate measures to get away or to get ready to protect themselves. So they would hang around the ornithopod herds towards the back. This heavily armored back was bone. Very hard to sink your teeth into bone. So these ankylosaur dinosaurs were built for defense, as you can tell. It's got a thick, bony back. And also, they had spikes on their back, of bony spikes. It would be very hard to kill something like this. And you know that it's also got spikes around its head. So it would be hard to attack it, obviously. They were slow-moving. They were quadrupeds. They were herbivores. They had sharp, beak-like mouths to cut through the toughest Cretaceous vegetation. The other defense that the ankylosaurs had was this thick, bony mace, which it would crack the ribs of any theropod, even Tyrannosaurus rex, if it got it at the right moment and at the right location. It could severely hurt the theropods. So these, when they were attacked, they would use these for defense, and the theropod would have to be very careful. How would you kill one of these things, do you think? If you were a theropod and you wanted to kill one of these things, what would you do? Well, the only way to kill one of these things is to turn it over, because there's no armor on the back of these, on their belly. The soft belly is soft. So the tactic that would have to be used would be to turn over one of these ankylosaurs to eat them. Those are the 7 kinds of dinosaurs you need to know about. You should know which ones are Ornithischia and which ones are Sauriscia, what they look like, what their features are, because there'll be questions on these in the next test. Let's take a look at these theropods more carefully. Here you can see a theropod, and it's interested in killing this ankylosaur. And the ankylosaur is using its bony mace to protect himself. Here's other theropods. They're also walked on 2 legs. They always walk on 2 legs like these. These are earlier theropods. Here you can see a sauropod dinosaur with its long tail, and sauropods would use these to communicate with one another. They would also use these to protect themselves. The whip-like tails could be used to knock down any predators. The long neck. These ate so much food and became so huge that sometimes they would have swallow stones, which we call gastroliths. And gastroliths are these smooth stones that we find in the guts of sauropod dinosaurs. Why would they eat these round stones? Well, that helped them digest the food, their vegetation. So sauropods would also often have these gastroliths, gastroliths, that they would swallow to help them digest their food. Once again, here is a ornithopod dinosaur with a head crest and the nasal passages connected through the head crest, used to communicate with one another. This is a pachycephalosaur with its thick skull, and it's a biped, and it's a herbivore. Here is a ceratopsian, the Triceratops, very common during the Cretaceous. It's an Ornithischia, a bird-hipped dinosaur. Dinosaurs, we think now, are warm-blooded creatures. How do we know that? Well, if you look at the blood vessels that go through the bones of dinosaurs, they're numerous, just like in mammals. So we used to think they were cold-blooded, slow-moving creatures. We now know that they were probably warm-blooded. In addition, some research done by University of Southern California scientists in the chemistry of dinosaur bones also indicates they are warm-blooded. Here you can see additional evidence: large brain in relative to body size. Some dinosaurs ended up having feathers; those become birds. They had a 4-chambered heart for pumping lots of blood. Large body sizes indicates they were probably warm-blooded. So now we think that dinosaurs are warm-blooded. Flying reptiles, pterosaurs, they're not dinosaurs. Here's a beautiful pterosaur fossil. And we talked about the marine reptiles, so we're not going to talk about those again. We'll talk about it a little bit. Let's take a look here. What type of marine reptile is that? It's a plesiosaur. What type is this? It's an ichthyosaur. And what type is that? A mosasaur. You should know those as well. Crocodiles, turtles, and lizards also appeared during the Mesozoic era. Snakes appeared during the Cretaceous at the end of the Mesozoic. All of these reptiles survived till today, though the dinosaurs did not survive, obviously. We should also know that the birds appeared during the Jurassic period, and in Germany we find the first birds. This is Archaeopteryx, and you'd think that the birds would have evolved from the bird-hipped dinosaurs, the Ornithopods, but actually they evolved from Sauriscia, lizard-hipped dinosaurs. And the birds are the last vertebrates to appear in the rock record. They appeared at the very last. First was the fish, then the amphibians, then the reptiles, then the mammals, then the dinosaurs, and lastly the birds. And here you can see the feathers on a Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx was found in Austria and southern Germany. Here you can see the bones of Archaeopteryx. The birds did not dominate the skies of the Mesozoic era. The pterosaurs did. Mammals also appeared during the Mesozoic era, and these were therapsids. And let's take a look at what these therapsids look like. The mammals that existed during the Mesozoic era were few and far between. Here's a common therapsid. You can see that it's a mammal, but it still has some reptilian characteristics. It's a very primitive mammal. It still laid eggs. When it walked back and forth, its backbone moved back and forth like a lizard. But it had mammalian traits, including body hair. It's warm-blooded. We see evidence of the mothering instinct. Female mammals have an innate bond with their babies, and they try and protect their babies. That's a mammalian trait. Females also have milk teats that allow for the baby to feed on and have a higher chance of survival, and also grow faster, giving it a higher chance of survival as well. Mammals also have a 4-chambered heart, allowing to pump more blood, since mammals are warm-blooded. There were only 4 different types of these therapsids, mammals, that existed during the Mesozoic. They lived in fear of dinosaurs. They dug in burrows, and they would sleep during the day and hunt during the night. So we say they're nocturnal, and they were in constant fear of the dinosaurs. Even though these lived in fear of the dinosaurs, they would survive until the Cenozoic era, and the dinosaurs would not. Let's take a look at this. This is a reptilian ear canal, and here a mammalian ear canal, which contains extra bones in the ear canal. The therapsids had a mammalian ear canal, so they were leaving behind the reptilian traits. Mammals were small, and they lived in fear. None of them bigger than a house cat. Okay, In the next video, we'll talk about, next week, we'll talk about the different types of mammals. So we'll call it quits for now.